Hi and welcome back to Tech Radar. I'm Tom Bedford here with our video review of the latest super premium flagship smartphone from Oppo. Oppo's Find X series has quickly become a staple of the early year phone release bonanza, and the Find X3 launch was no exception, bringing a top-end Pro model as well as a low-end Lite and mid-range Neo device. The Pro is what we're looking at today though, and it's where Oppo has focused most of its new innovations. It's got some brand new software improvements, a cutting-edge display, and new rear cameras. It's got enough new tech to make Samsung and Apple worried, and that's fitting because at its price it rivals the iPhone 12 Pro Max or the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra. Before we start analysing the Oppo Find X3 Pro though, we should probably let you know that you already have been. That's because the video and audio you're looking at and listening to right now were actually recorded on the phone. This is the front-facing camera. And this footage is from the rear camera, so videos you shoot should look and sound exactly like this. Now let's look at the rest of the Oppo Find X3 Pro. Like its predecessor, the Find X3 Pro has a 6.7-inch AMOLED screen with a 2.5K resolution, max brightness of 1300 nits, and refresh rate that tops out at 120Hz. We found it a great looking display that's smooth to use. The phone marks the debut of Oppo's full-colour path management system, which means photos you take, videos you stream, and files you download don't get too compressed or tweaked on the way from their source to the phone's display. This is useful for maintaining colour accuracy, which could be great for professionals using the device, though we're not sure average users will notice the difference. The Oppo Find X3 Pro's design is our least favourite change from the Find X2 Pro, though this is of course fairly subjective. That phone was available in faux leather with a dramatic waterfall curved screen and a relatively minimal vertical camera bump on the back. The Find X3 Pro on the other hand only comes in glass, its display doesn't curve at the edges nearly as much, and its camera bump is, well, we'll let the pictures do the talking. It's got an iPhone-like lens placement and the bump is joined to the body by smooth curves. Oppo describes this bump as an engineering marvel, and it may well be, but we're not sure it really stands out from the crowd. The phone is fairly light, at least compared to many other flagship phones, so it felt good to hold in the hands. That is, except the volume rocker on the left edge of the device was fairly hard to reach. The device has a USB-C port but no headphone jack, and an in-screen fingerprint sensor which was quick and easy to use. Now for the Oppo Find X3 Pro's big features, its cameras, and it's got not one, not two, but three bespoke cameras made for it. These are the 50MP main camera and 50MP ultra-wide camera, both using the same Sony sensor made especially for Oppo, and a 3MP micro lens which takes super close-up macro shots. They're joined by a 13MP telephoto camera and a 32MP selfie snapper. Pictures taken on those first two cameras look great, full of detail with top contrast, and that was the case for lower light settings too. Thanks to them having the same sensor, colours and brightness look identical between them, and wide pictures weren't too distorted either. Despite only having a 3MP sensor, the micro lens is also great, but in a different way. It's used for taking super close-up pictures of tiny textures and details, as it can zoom in up to 60 times on things. The way it works is that you lay it flat down on a surface, as the lens has a ring light around it so it can illuminate its own subject. Using this micro lens, we took incredibly close-up pictures of things like poppy seeds, wood textures, a computer screen and more, and saw far more intimate details than the human eye would ever see. Sure, the mode isn't exactly useful for pro photographers having a low resolution sensor, but it was super fun to play around with. The telephoto camera is possibly the weakest of the four, though given its peers that doesn't make it bad at all. It takes 3x optical, 5x hybrid or 20x digital zoom snaps, and detail look good up to the far reaches of that spectrum, but when you hit hybrid zoom, colours look a little different than they do on the main camera. We found selfies taken looked great, with portrait snaps especially looking a bit better than those taken on rival phones thanks to the accurate artificial bokeh background blur and subtle but effective setting tweaks. We've touched on the Oppo Find X3 Pro's videography already, you know exactly how shots look, but we should add it records up to 4K 60 frames per second on the rear cameras. There's also a Pro video mode here which feels similar to Sony's Cinema Pro app. You can alter white balance, ISO, exposure value, which lens you're using and more to get an experience that isn't a million miles off using an actual video camera. Compared to some other recent flagship phones like the Xiaomi Mi 11 and Samsung Galaxy S21, there aren't too many fun and silly photography modes, but there's still a lot for pros to enjoy. Like most other early 2021 flagships, the Oppo Find X3 Pro has a Snapdragon 888 chipset which provides super fast processing speeds, 5G connectivity and decent battery optimizations. We ran some benchmark tests and the Find X3 Pro got a really high score, though one that was beaten by a few 2020 and 2021 flagships including the Motorola Edge Plus, OnePlus 8 and Xiaomi Mi 11. At this high end of the processing spectrum though, you'll barely notice the difference. This is a great phone for gaming too, thanks to that chipset as well as Oppo's gaming mode, which mutes notifications and dedicates all the phone's processing power to the game at hand. Oppo's phones run on Android with the company's ColorOS laid over the top, and as with most Android forks, the biggest change here is the design of the thing. The default wallpapers and app icons have a pastel hue and soft designs, and we're really big fans of the look, but it really comes down to your preference. There's loads of customization options here though, more than stock Android or even Xiaomi's MIUI. For example, you can design your own always-on display, edit the design of app icons, change the icon for the fingerprint sensor indicator, choose the highlight colours for menus and apps, and more. When we first set up the phone, we spent absolutely ages tweaking all the settings to our liking. The Find X3 Pro has a 4500 mAh battery, which is about average for a flagship smartphone, but big screens and fancy display settings can really drain battery life. We were surprised though with the phone's lifespan, as it always lasted us a day between charges, even through quite heavy use. 2 days though is out of the question. Charging here is pretty quick thanks to 65-watt fast charging. Oppo estimates that it takes just over half an hour to power the Find X3 Pro's battery to full, and from our own testing we'd concur. There's also 30-watt wireless charging, but this takes a little bit longer. For fans of smartwatches or wireless earbuds, there's also reverse wireless charging, with which you can turn your phone into its own powering mats, but this is even slower. Overall, this is a pretty great smartphone, but of course there's a catch, and it's in the pricing area. The phone costs £1,099 sterling, that converts to about $1,500 US or $2,000 Australian dollars. In the UK, that's the same starting price as the iPhone 12 Pro Max, another super pricey phone, and it means you're going to have to shell out loads to get your hands on this device. When you consider the tech you're getting, the price might seem reasonable, but the Samsung Galaxy S21 and Xiaomi Mi 11 both cost a lot less, and they're not necessarily huge downgrades either. That high price is our biggest issue with the Oppo Find X3 Pro, but beyond that it's really hard to find fault with the phone. Its display looks great, it's powerful enough for gaming or video editing, and we had loads of fun testing out all the camera features, especially the micro lens. Hopefully this review's been useful. Let us know what you think about the phone in the comments below, especially if you think it looks like it's worth the price or not. We've got a full written review of the Oppo Find X3 Pro on the Tech Radar website, so head over there for an in-depth look at the phone, and remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for all the latest tech news and reviews.